People who have won a win-a-day/date with a celebrity competition, how was it? Spinal Tap. Back in the 80s in Detroit I won an invite, via a radio station contest, to a small private concert with Spinal Tap. They never broke character, performed every single song from the movie and were absolutely amazing musicians. To this day I would count it as one of the most fun nights of my life. I don't know if this quite counts, but in 6th grade I won a science competition called D-Cyber Mission and my group got a trip to DC. Our group's mentor was Arthur Fry, the guy who invented the post-it note. I was fucking thrilled and chatted with him non-stop the entire trip, and he couldn't have been more happy about having a bunch of kids hanging on to his every word about science. Flash forward 10 years and I got started as a reporter covering the Patent and Trademark Office in Alexandria. I'm at a gala there for inventors and I ran into Arthur Fry. It's been 10 years, so there's no way he remembers us, but I come up to him anyway and start talking about eCyber Mission. Not only does he remember us, he remembers the project we presented. I was so thrilled. I'm going to be so late to this and it's sort an answer to this question. Throw away because I don't want my normal submates to focus on this. In 2005 I was in my last year of medical school at the University of Arizona when Hurricane Katrina hit. In the aftermath a bunch of us got permission from the med school dean to head down and help the real doctors. There were so many of us that we had a lottery system. I think UOFA had a grant or donation to pay for 5/6 of us and basically the whole class volunteered. Well, I got picked and went. It was hard, sad and grueling work. On the second or third day this new guy showed to more of the grunt work in our little section, trash pickup, food delivery and handout, etc. I didn't recognize him at first but after a minute the place was abuzz with the news that Brad Pitt was working with us, and sure enough it was him. He absolutely worked his ass off too and after the first day the shock wore off. It became no big deal. On many occasions over the next few days Brad Pitt emptied out my trash cans, got me clean linens and even lunch. Those military pre-made meals is what we ate. He could not have been more down to earth or nicer or more accommodating and he never once asked for special treatment. He even sort of learned my name and called me Doc K. As you can imagine the patients just glowed upon seeing him and he was always gracious and friendly and took what time he could to hang out with all of us. To this day, I've never seen that he's sought or received any praise or notoriety for what he did. Contrast that to the other guy who had photo ops done of him standing in a canoe with a shotgun plastered all over the media. He left very unannounced and we were told it was because he didn't want fanfare and his departure to distract from what we were doing. Still to this day one of the most memorable experiences of my life and I will always have a tremendous respect for him. Edit, sorry for the atrocious grammar, I'm laying in bed on my iPad excited to get this out before my story is even more buried. Got to meet some cast from Back to the Future on the 25th anniversary too thanks to winning a radio contest. Christopher Lloyd didn't seem like himself due to illness, unfortunately, but Lee Thompson is an absolute sweetheart in person. Fairly low on the celebrity totem pole, but when I was in Little League, I won an opportunity to have lunch with one of the ball players for the farm team for the local MLB club. I was sorta put on the spot, and I think 9 or 10 for picking the actual player, so I picked more or less at random based on the only guy whose name I can remember. Think he played second base or shortstop. Not important. Anyway, the lunch itself, from what I can recall, the lunch was pretty pleasant, not any of the awkwardness that those sort of situations may lead to. But then again, I was 9, so who knows. The part that was most special to me came afterwards. I went to a number of home games for that minor league team throughout that season, and we usually had bleacher tickets near their dugout. Every time he was playing, he'd always spot me, come over and say hi, give me a signed ball, that sort of thing. It was pretty neat that it wasn't some sort of one and done oh god contractual obligations kind of things, or at least it didn't feel that way. Never went terribly far with baseball, but I think that experience was one of the reasons I still have an abiding affection for the sport and love watching my local team. I won a contest with my brother to spend the day in LA with Donald Faison. Personally, Scrubs was one of my favorite shows, so I was beyond excited to go. Donald was super cool. He even let my brother and I do the Eagle additionally because it was the last taping of the season for his show The X's. He took us to an after party and we spent time with Wayne Knight, Newman from Seinfeld. While they were taping, I got a VIP pass and Donald told everyone that basically I could do what I wanted, which included walking behind set, meeting the cast and crew's family, and eating the food behind the set. It was one of the coolest experiences ever. Donald was an amazing host, a real down-to-earth guy and a genuine person. My only regret is that we didn't stay longer. Frown. In college, I won a contest to meet Graham Chapman of Monty Python. It was one of the great experiences of my life. He was a really sweet, low-key guy. He didn't act at all like a comedian. He was a bit stiff and formal, almost like a doctor. Very kind and polite, but seemed a bit uncomfortable being a room with a handful of awestruck college kids. I made a silly crack about how sad the hors d'oeuvres were and he laughed out loud. So now, for the rest of my life, I can say I made Graham Chapman laugh. It was barely a year later that he died. I was devastated, but it will always be a deeply treasured memory. I have his autograph framed on my wall. When I was 12, I won a contest to play video games with Linkin Park before a concert of theirs. There were these video game buses set up at the venue that I was asked to wait outside of while security brought the band out. The band ended up only being Rob, the drummer, and my brother-in-law, and I just stood outside the bus and talked to him for like 10 minutes before he left. Won a meet and greet with Lenny Kravitz backstage, just prior to one of his Australian concerts. Was awesome. Tour manager came and got us just after the Cranberries had finished their set and took us backstage where we waited beside a whole heap of their road cases and also just outside the Wolf Den, which was Wolfmother's backstage dressing room. The Wolfmother guys kept us entertained as they regularly paced back and forward to the Wolf Den in various states of drug-induced dishevelment. When Lenny appeared from his backstage room, he seemed to have the relaxed demeanor of someone that just had 10 Valium, pretty sure he had been meditating or something, though there was a woman who I assume was his makeup artist too. Guy was shorter than I anticipated and smelt really exotic. Was super friendly with us, posed for photos, spoke to us and was one of the most humble, laid-back people I ever met. He then walked on stage and killed it. I won a contest when I was younger, like 14, to fly to New York and meet Marc Ecko. I was this skinny Midwest white girl meeting a clothing designer for street, urban styles. I mean, me and my dad looked so out of place. But he was the chillest dude. He showed us around the office. Gave us food. Let us sign some skateboards and walls. He had me do a photo shoot in his kids' line. We even went shopping in Manhattan with him and he bought me like $500 worth of brand name clothes. When we were out shopping, he had a photographer with us and a personal shopper. People on the street were like, "Who is she?" because they thought I was famous. Lol. He was the chillest dude and didn't mind at all that we were there. He was doing a collaboration with 50 Cent and let me meet him and take a photo. It was such a weird experience, and the only reason I won was because my dad entered tons of random contests and won a lot. But this was definitely the biggest he ever won. I love getting to tell people I've met 50 Cent. They never believe me. Only moderately related, but fun nonetheless. A friend of mine came to DC for Obama's inauguration in '09. He's standing outside and looks around just before it starts, and notices the guy next to him is Edward Norton. He doesn't say anything because he didn't want to be that guy who ruined the experience for him, but a few seconds later some other people start screaming and making a scene. At this point my friend has stepped over and he just busts a grin and says something like, "Yo, Ron, you got a couple more idiots thinking you're that actor." The fans hushed thinking he was a doppelganger, and my friend got to hang out with Norton after that. My mom won a contest to have dinner with Kevin Bacon and his brother while they were touring with their two-man band. I was too young to go because they went to a Hard Rock cafe after hours when they were almost exclusively serving alcohol. She said he was arguably one of the funniest people she's ever met, and that his brother, while not as big a celebrity as him, was also very down to earth and nice. I'm slightly disappointed because this brings my 7/6 degrees of Kevin Bacon down to 1. Edit, sorry. I was friends with a girl and her brother when I was younger. Their mom suddenly died of cancer while they were still young. A short story contest came up at school that was nationwide, and the prize was to visit the Harry Potter set in Europe and meet J.K. Rowling herself, along with some cast members. The prompt was something along the lines of, if anything from the wizarding world of Harry Potter could come true, what would you like it to be and why? To cope with the pain of her mother passing, my friend ended up writing an essay on how she would like a potion that could bring her mom back, or just be able to see her and speak to her again. Weeks passed and she got the news that she, out of thousands of entries, won the contest. She got everything they said she would win, the tour and meet and greets. I remember showing us pictures when she got back of the whole experience and how truly kind everybody was. When I was 19, I was into retro movies and music and very much out of the loop when it came to modern-day celebrities. I was working at an innovations store in Miami, not Sharper Image, the other one, and a nice-looking, muscular man in a tight black t-shirt and cargo pants came in. I asked him if he needed help, and he asked me a few questions and proceeded to buy about $1,000 worth of merchandise from me, not unusually high sale for that area. During the time I was helping him, people kept staring and whispering, and I assumed it was because of his physique. A guy like this does stand out. After the transaction was finished and I wished him a good day, I went back to the sales floor when my boss grabbed my shoulders and started screaming, "Oh my God! Oh my God!" I looked at him like he was nuts and asked him what was wrong with him. He looked at me like I was crazy and said, "You don't know who that guy was?" I didn't. "That's The Rock." I shrugged, still in the dark, and went back to work. I wish I could go back to that day in 2001. I won one of those ride with a professional snowboarder contests off of the website CC's. I had no idea that people won those things for real, so I was pretty stoked. Apparently I was one of about a couple thousand that entered to win the contest. I was able to take a friend, so I brought my cousin with me to fly out to Los Angeles to go snowboarding. We landed at LAX and one of the reps picked us up from the airport. He took us all the way to a place called Mount High Resort, which was just a ghetto ski slope full of man-made snow. Not gonna lie, I loved its skate park feel. The professional snowboarder that I got to ride with was named Stevie Bell. He was a class act, totally genuine dude. Didn't feel like he was forcing himself to be nice, just felt like it was hanging out with one of the homies. 10/10 would do it again. I won a lunch with George Takei through a charity auction. We met for lunch on the Paramount lot in Los Angeles. The auction was through a Japanese organization, so he ended up spending a lot of time talking about his experience with World War II internment camps. It was really interesting to hear his perspective firsthand. Star Trek never came up, which is fine because I'm more of a Janeway fan than a Kirk fan. After lunch, he took us, there were 3 of us total, me and 2 friends, for a tour of the studio lot. There wasn't any Star Trek stuff to see, except for one really neat little tidbit. He showed us where they filmed the part of Star Trek 4 where, at the end of the movie, the crew is splashing around San Francisco Bay with a bunch of out-of-time whales. Turns out, it's just part of the parking lot at the studio. It's inset, so they flood it. There is a big wall behind the lot that they paint to look like the sky. Finally, before we left, George insisted that we have something autographed by him. We all went into the studio store together. He looked around, trying to find anything Star Trek related, but he couldn't. This was several years ago, before the new movies came out. He walks up to the lady working the register, and he says, using that very distinctive voice/tone of his, "Hello, Mom. Do you have anything Star Trek related?" She looks at him oddly, probably a little starstruck. She doesn't respond. George is looking a little hurried and annoyed. "Do you see?" he says, "I was on the show." Cue everyone breaking into hysterical laughter, except him. Yeah, Maybe you had to be there to appreciate it, but there was something remarkable about the way he almost apologetically asserted himself. He was humble and lovable, a true character. Having lived in LA for several years at the time, I'd met a lot of celebrities, but none of them ever were as gracious as Mr. Takei. TL, Doctor, would totally have lunch with George Takei again. He's awesome. Edit, people are incredulous at the idea of favoring Janeway over other captains. I get it. Would it help if I said the captain of the USS Titan is my second favorite? I had this happen once quite by accident. It was in 1987 and I was hanging out with a friend at her place. We were listening to the radio and the DJ came on saying he had tickets to a concert. I called and damned if I didn't win. The concert was the next weekend. They said they were doing a remote out of the Hard Rock Cafe that day and that I could come get the tickets there. Okay, cool, we'll get the tickets, grab lunch and then kill some time till the concert starts. We head down there at the appointed time, go and tell them why we are there and they lead us off to a side dining room and sit us down. They say we get lunch too and hand us a menu. As we are ordering, other people come and sit down at the table with us. They look like typical 80s headbangers, then I realize they have British accents. I do a double take and think, damn, that guy looks like Joe Elliott. I glance around the table and seeing Rick Allen, confirmed it, I'm sitting at a table with fucking Def Leppard. They were pleasant, although really tired, maybe hungover. They didn't act aloof or like they were being taxed by doing it and were actively conversing with a couple of starstruck teenagers. Overall, it was pretty cool. They gave us vinyl albums and autographed them, gave us shirts and all sorts of other stuff. Definitely a good memory. Overall, it was a great experience. When I was about 17 back in 2003, I won some meet and greet passes to a Thrice, Thursday, and Coheed and Cambria concert. All the dudes in Thrice and Thursday were super cool, just walking around having conversations and stuff. I had done a meet and greet before but it was more like hey how's it going? I'll sign something for you then be on your way. ZZ Top was like this. Really nice dudes but they seemed like they had no interest in meeting or greeting, but this was way different and more personal. Anyways, the best moment was after the show. My ride bailed on me so I am just sitting outside the venue and I realize that I am sitting next to the then bassist for Coheed. He's swigging some Captain and Coke out of a 2-liter bottle and chatting it up on the phone to his girlfriend. A bum on a bike rolls around and asks if anyone wants to buy his bike for $20. The bassist asks if he could take it for a spin first and in the process hands the phone and the drink to me and says keep her company, I'll be right back. So here I am, talking to this dude's girlfriend and swigging his rum while he's cruising around on this bum's bike making Ric Flair woo sounds. He ended up buying the bike and throwing it in the back of the tour van. When he came back he took the phone back and told his girlfriend I'll call you later and then started to chat me up. We got pretty well lit for what seemed like forever, probably about an hour and a half, until the new ride I called earlier finally came to pick me up. It was a pretty good time. TL Dr. Ride bailed after a concert, got drunk with Coheed and Cambria bassist while he bought a $20 bike off a bum. Not a date as such, more a phone call. I saw on the singer Hosier's Twitter he was doing a ring this number and I'll answer. Saw some people tried literally hundreds of times. So I thought why not? Got through first time, conversation lasted a minute, spent half the time asking if it was really him then just said so. How's things? Briefly answered me then hung up. Back when the Spice Girls were big in the early 2000s, they were in town for a concert. A local radio station was doing a contest where you call in to win breakfast with the Spice Girls. I was a young teenage boy back then, who was at home sick from school that day, so for shits and giggles I decided to call to try to win. I ended up winning. The radio station asks me my address and says the tour bus will be in front of my house in an hour. I am nervous as shit, because the Spice Girls were about to be at my house, and I'm just here all alone. Mind you, I am the shyest person you will ever meet, and a tour bus full of the hottest girl band on the scene was about to be at my house. So the bus finally arrives. Only it wasn't really the Spice Girls. It was 4 old ladies who called themselves the Spice Girls, who were cooks. They ended up making scrambled eggs, pancakes, and toast for me on the tailgate of their bus. It was the strangest, weirdest, most awkward thing ever. And no one but me was there to witness it. Got to meet Flavor Flav at a private party. He was going to MC the night for a small group of about 10 of us. If you've seen him on TV, you get the impression that he plays the part of an ignorant douchebag, but that maybe in real life he's more real and that was all just a show for the MTV cameras, etc. Nope. He really is that big of a dumb jerk. Maybe he was drunk, high, or some combination thereof, but the guy just seemed to be completely on another planet. Couldn't even make sentences or coherent thought. And he was getting paid for the event, so you'd think a musical performer would be in full game mode just like a concert. Instead, he was like the ghetto rapper version of your weird uncle who sits on the porch drinking Old Milwaukee and yelling at squirrels. I won an auction for a date with a seagull. I was, still am, married, but I was a big fan of her chosen charity. Met her backstage after the auction with my wife in tow, who was adamant that I go on this date. She thought it was hilarious. Talked to the very nice cheerleader and we all had a good laugh at the awkwardness while agreeing to go to the Evergreen Aviation Museum since I love aviation, and have dinner. Turned out to be a very fun day. She was very interested in the planes and history, and I was more than happy to spew nerd knowledge about all the displays. Had a wonderful dinner with lots of small talk and laughs before calling it a night. We kept in touch, she got married, had kids, and our families try to visit one another 1 to 2 times a year. They're our best friends. So, I'd say it worked out really well. Edit, added a link to what a seagull is. Edit 2, since my username seems to be a popular topic. Creep was my military call sign. It's chosen for you and usually for doing something stupid. Kind of related. In the 90s, my sister tried calling, at least 100 times, into a radio station to win tickets to meet the Backstreet Boys and was listening to the radio simultaneously to see if they had a winner yet. Unfortunately, they announced the winner, not my sis, but their voice sounded familiar. Then she realized it was her best friend on the radio. I don't like the Backstreet Boys, I just won for my best friend. So in the end, my sister did kind of win and got to hang out with / fangirl over the Backstreet Boys. I will forever be jealous. Edit, they are still best friends after 20 years. And my sister, being obsessed with AJ, grabbed his jacket and he looked at her twin self like. Then they played some songs and that was that. I met Linkin Park at a meet and greet. They didn't do photos individually, and if you asked for more than one thing to be signed, they, security, threatened to kick you out. I was so sad at first. They also were just signing names, no messages. I had only won one backstage and it was in my name, but my friend told me that their songs got him through a teen pregnancy and helped him out a lot. I couldn't really identify with that, and I guess still can't. When I'm depressed, music doesn't fix it. But anyways. Mike came over to me when it was my turn and I politely asked for a moment of his time and told him about my friend waiting for me in the audience and if he could sign one thing for him. Mike wrote him a very nice and personalized note and was so sweet about it. My friend broke down in tears when I gave it to him. Can't thank them enough. Not me, but a friend of mine won a similar competition. When we were in university, Brody Jenner was big for some reason. And my buddy was a bit of a class clown, smart enough guy, but just has a great sense of humor. He decides he wants to win this competition, so he gets a big following behind him. The crux of the whole situation was that this competition was a vote to win format. Naturally, everyone voted for him, but in the end, Brody refused because my buddy was a dude. Fortunately, the campus bar felt bad about the situation and hooked us up with some free booze for the night. I have a friend who was the celebrity people were trying to win a date with. He said the girl that won was unattractive but pleasant. Took a limo to get some dinner, then they went to a pre-screening for a film. He was a movie critic. Sounded pretty uneventful.